G'day YouTube, my name's Lance. Welcome to Bundy Bear's Shed. This little video is going to be part of our Massey Ferguson 65 restoration series, but it's all about core plugs or Welsh plugs or freeze plugs or whatever you'd like to call them. They are really a core plug. Now different places of the world call them different things. Now in doing research for YouTube videos, I often put a video question out there, or not a question so much, do a search on YouTube for fitting core plugs. I did a wiki search on Welsh plug, and it's interesting what you find comes up. And I do that in case there's things out there that have changed since I learnt, if there's a more modern way of doing something. It's just trying to stay up to date. I suppose like a doctor that's got to read literature constantly to keep up with the trends. YouTube, tractors, engines and all that, look, I do the same for sure. Now, on reading Wiki, it come up with a good little yarn that the Welsh brothers made a car, and they were in the testing phase, and where one of the core plugs were like a pipe fitting that's screwed in, and where one of those come out, one of the brothers got a coin, put it in the hole and peened it in to hold the shape, to hold the coolant in, so that they could continue their testing. So according to Wiki, that's how they become known as Welsh plugs. I thought they must have been invented in Wales or something. But anyway, that was according to Wiki the other day when I was doing my research. Now, they're commonly known as freeze plugs, but they are actually a core plug. Now, when you pour the casting of a block, an engine block, a cylinder head, something like that, you have a mould. The mould can often be a two-piece mould, so it's two sections. But if you want a gallery going through, a hole, to bore later on for a piston, for in between the outside of the engine and where the liners are, or where the engine is inside, there's a cavity there that the coolant runs around. You need to have all that cast in as you go. And the mould is the main part on the outside, but if you need a hole going right through, say, to put a camshaft in, a rough cast hole to put a cam in, or a cylinder liner or something like that, they put what's called a core in there. And a core is like, it's like sand with an adhesive in it to hold it so it holds the shape. So they put that into the engine block, into the mould, and they support it at either end. And then when they pour the molten material in to form the mould, or to form the block or the cylinder head or whatever they're casting, the liquid runs all in around, and so the mould gives you the outside shape that you want, and that's on it can have, like on these Perkins engines, it can have a part number cast into it. It can have a, on the Massey Fergusons, the little 3 spires, of the town where they were cast and things like that. But the cores inside, once the block's been poured, they can open the mould, they can get the block out and clean it up, but they do need a way of getting into all those little nooks and crannies to clean the sand out and flush it out, blow it out, do whatever they do. So they actually make places in the side of the block to get all that out. And so the term core plug is probably the correct one, because they open these holes up to clean the block, to pressure clean. I'm not sure how they all do it, but it is to clean the core sand out, for the cores for the holes and the rest. So it's to clean the block, so they are really a core plug. Now, they get called Welsh plugs as well. We'll have a look at that later on. They get called freeze plugs. Now, from what I can ascertain, they're not really a freeze plug. I was looking at stuff over in America and England and Canada and places like that, and they say that if you haven't put the coolant in your engine and you've just put water and you get low temperatures and the coolant in the blocks freezes a little bit, These freeze plugs, core plugs, whatever, have been known to pop and relieve the tension. Look, I believe that's how it works, but on reading the theory on some of them, they're saying, well, that's not really what's meant to happen. They reckon you can have a core plug in there and the block will still crack, and so I don't know. In Australia, we don't have that problem because we don't have the cold temperatures, well, up where we are anyway. So our main thing with Welsh plugs or core plugs is if people don't run coolant in their tractors or in their engines and they just run water, they corrode. Now, a lot of the engines at a factory just have mild steel core plugs in them. So over time they corrode, and David Browns and little Fergies and things like that with just the mild steel ones in them, they do corrode. You'll see a water leak and it'll be eating out from the inside out. So nowadays when I do an engine up, and there's stainless available, there's brass available to replace the mild steel. Now on our engine here I'm going to use brass. I did ask my engine parts supplier if they had stainless steel, because this engine, when I got to it, someone had put stainless in one time, and they said, look, they didn't have any, but they did have some brass ones. And I said, oh, well, I want to film it this weekend. Give me some brass ones, please. So we're going to put brass in. Now, right, pretend you're at school. Well, don't, because you probably start looking out the window. Okay, there's a couple of different sorts of them, and over this side here, this is a dome Welsh plug. So that's often called a saucer Welsh plug. I call them Welsh plugs. It's just, when I was a pup doing my apprenticeship, we all just called them Welsh plugs. When you look at the kits, it doesn't matter whether you have the cup or the dome, they call them Welsh plugs. But from what I understand, from what I could ascertain on the internet, on Wiki and on other sites, engineering sites and that, this is probably a Welsh plug, because of the coin and the Welsh brothers, and this is probably a core plug. But look, they're all core plugs, don't get too upset about all that. So the dome type here, or the saucer, it's called a saucer type, it comes down onto a shoulder here. So when it comes down, this has been a machine's shoulder from the factory, and this can be rough cast in here, like all that can be like rough cast, and it doesn't matter. So what happens with this one is you come in, you pop it in, you depress the center here, so you give it a bit of a smack in the center, peen it in with a hammer, flatten that out a little bit, and in doing that, it expands out each side, and that's what locks it in. It locks it into this little shoulder here. Now, the other part of the discussion is, do you do them dry or do you put a sealant of some kind on them? A lot of places said do them dry, but look, I don't. I was always taught use a bit of, well, back, you don't know whether you're being taught the right things when you're a young bloke. And where I was taught, they said put a bit of silicone around them and pop them in. I bloody hate silicone. It's just rubbish. It's not the place for it. A little bead, if a little bead gets in your engine here and starts floating around, it'll fill your radiator. What I do use is Loctite 515. It's the strawberry jam looking one. So you can put a little bead in on the shoulder here, just a tiny bit, you don't need much. And when you put the Welsh plug in and you smack it in the center here, only needs a couple, and it expands out tight. And if this surface has got a little bit of corrosion or pits or something like that, it will help seal, being older machines. Now, it shouldn't have, that should be a nice clear machine surface. You shouldn't get too worried. But get a little bit of emery tape and just clean around. It's like everything mechanic, and it's all about cleaning. Get that lip all nice and clean as you can. Whether you put sealant or not in, I like to. I use the Loctite product. Then if a little bead of the Loctite product comes down in through here, or a little bit squirts out, well, what happens is when the water or the coolant goes in, it just dissipates and you don't have a little bead floating around. So that's what I like to do. Now, this cup type core plug, it will have straight walls where it goes in. So it doesn't need a shoulder to sit down onto, it's just a clear hole. Now, as they get corroded over time, you'll see a nice machined surface where it goes in, and then you'll often see a little bit of rust or something like that from the cooling liquid side of it. So if it has a little bit of corrosion and that's starting here, once again I try and get a bit of emery tape, make sure that's nice and clean all the way. Yep, you can still see that, I think. Yep, let's hope you can. And you need to clear that as much as you can. Now, why do we need to do that? Say you've got a really nice clean section up here and it's got a bit of gunge down the bottom there. Well, I've noticed over time that Welsh plugs are a different thickness. Now, the stainless steel ones I took out of my engine, they were probably 2, maybe 3 millimeters shallower than this brass one. So, you know, the corrosion is probably right up there. Now, these ones here, you'll notice they have a rounded edge. That's not very good. It has a rounded edge, so that edge is actually a little bit larger than the hole. So you should not be able to poke this in the hole. So what this here probably should really look like, I'll just do one side, is where this comes down there, it probably should be about there, not out like this one. So what happens is when you push this Welsh plug in and push him down through, hopefully you've got a nice clean surface. The Welsh plug is in correctly, well, this is what I was taught, it's in correctly when this outer surface is flush with the block, or say 0.5 millimetre under the block, but flush with the block's okay. Now, you can see on this Welsh plug here, you can see that top surface there, that's very flat, and then it's curved round here. This curve doesn't do the sealing. That little piece at the top there does the sealing. So it's a press fit through here. So once again, whether you put sealant on them or not, over YouTube, everywhere, there was people saying don't do it. Most people put something on, but I watched a few good engine reconditioning videos. They did nothing, they put nothing on, but and they just made sure with the block clean and this Welsh plug clean, they just went in. And being a press fit, they should be fine. Once again, I always put just the tiniest smear of Loctite 515, which is the gasket material, on there, and put it in. Okay, not sure where we got. I had a visitor come in, so I had to shut the video down, start again. So I know we're onto these Welsh plugs, and when you bring the Welsh plugs in, the orange part here, and you look on the internet on how to fit them, the general consensus is to say get a socket that fits inside there, like that's got a nice flat bottom. Inside there, give this a bit of a smack from in the bottom there where that green is, give that a smack, then as that Welsh plug pulls down into the bore, the sides come in and it seals on the side here. Now, I was told as a young man that you didn't do that, but you know, times do change, you've got to be aware of that. When I jumped on YouTube, I looked at a few sites where people were doing engines up, and they were big engine reconditioning shops and things like that, and they did it like this. They put something in the middle, a socket in the middle, or they had a dolly in the middle, and the dolly actually sat down inside the Welsh plug like that. Then they smacked on it until it was about flush or just a little bit under, and that was it. Some used sealant, some didn't. Like I say, I like to use Loctite 515 just a little bit, not a lot. But if we take that socket away, I'll try and keep this standing up for you. If I take the socket away, oh, when you're smacking that, I've got a little arrow there as a reminder. What can happen is if it gets a bit tight down the bottom here, this section here can end up, instead of being parallel, it can actually end up being in at the top there, and so it only sort of seals, say it might seal for here and here, but because when you've knocked this down and this bottom actually comes a bit lower, sometimes those sides curl in and you don't get the full surface area. That's what I was taught. But look, many people just put the socket in and away they go. Now, while I was checking stuff out, because what got me going was I'd been taught a certain way. Just about everywhere I went on YouTube didn't do it the way I'd been taught. So I thought, well, you know, times do change. Perhaps I've got to move with the times. And I come across the Napa website. Now, Napa, that's an aftermarket, I believe, car parts store. It's a pretty large show in America, and Napa had a sheet on fitting core plugs, and they said to fit them like I was taught. So I don't know, you got to make your own mind up. These blokes that are putting the sockets in the middle and knocking them in until they're flush, I'm bloody sure their Welsh plugs aren't falling out, or they wouldn't do it. But what I was taught was you bring a dolly in across the top here. So you bring a little piece of plate or something along the top there, and you only ever pushed on these edges, on that edge there, on the top edge, and on the top edge there. You can tell why I'm not a school teacher, can't you? So what I do, I have a little dolly here in this kit, and I don't touch them on the inside at all. I push on the top of the Welsh plug or the core plug. I push on the top. That's how I was taught. I did my apprenticeship, I started in 1977, March 1977. And that's how I was taught back then. I was told that you pushed them from the outside. You didn't push the inside because they could curl in on you. But look, I still do it that way. I'm going to do it that way on this engine. It was just, when you do look at a bit of research on things, God, we've got light everywhere except where it's handy. When you do look at the way things go, I don't know, it's just one of those things. But Napa reckons to do it like I was taught. I was taught at a technical college, you know, when I did a proper apprenticeship and things like that. We were taught to go on the edge. Perhaps leave some comments down below. It'll just be interesting. I'm not saying one's right, one's wrong. I'm going to stay with doing it how I was shown to do it. I can see the reasoning why I've been shown to do it that way. The way that a lot of people on YouTube are doing it, I was taught not to do it that way. So make your own mind up. Have a little watch of the YouTube clips yourself and see what they come up with. But I'm going to keep doing it the way I was shown. A lot of them don't put sealant on, yet I like to do that just because I was shown that. So I'm going to keep doing that. So I'll shift the camera now. We'll go to the front of the engine and I'll just show you putting one in. And there's 9 on this engine. I'll just put one in at the front so I can start putting the timing gear on. And yeah, I'll film that for you and you can make up your own mind from there. Okay, so this little Welsh plug here, it's an 1 1/4 Welsh plug, freeze plug, but like I say, we always call them Welsh plugs. I'm going to put it in the front here. Now, it sits in behind the timing cover backing plate. So what I've done, I've come in with a little bit of emery. I've cleaned all around inside there, roughened the surface up, look, just a little. Yeah, there's a slight scratch pattern in there now. And I've brake cleaned it, sprayed it with brake clean, blown it dry with air and just let it sit for a minute. Now, I've got a cartridge of 515 here. This is actually the Bearco R51, but same stuff. So look, we just put a slight, just a little smear in there. You don't need buckets of this stuff. And when you sit the Welsh plug in, it wants to start going in there on its own. So if we come over the back here, we get a knockometer and a little disc, and like I said, I like to come in and just do it on the disc itself. Try and get it straight if you can. There's a little wisp of brass going off there. And that is only just under. A little sliver of brass come off the side there when I was doing that one. That happens now and then. Doesn't happen with the steel ones so much, but it does happen with the brass. So I just like to clean that off. And there you go. Look, that won't leak. It's got a little piece of seal, a little bit of sealant there. I'll just see if it wants to go just a little bit. This top corner doesn't seem quite as deep as the other. But yeah, that's just under. A little sharp, a little bit there, a little shit. So there you go, good as gold. So that won't leak. That's how I like to do it, just with a flat disc and knock him in. So it's up to you how you do it. It's if we put a socket inside there and put it down, I see on YouTube people putting a socket down and doing it, and you still get a little sliver out now and then, sometimes. Who knows? So there you go. That's our little video on the Welsh plug. I'll just bring you around the front here so you can just have a better look at it, just to see how it went. And that won't leak, I'll bet on it. Okay, there you go. Let's move on to something else.